Hi, Reverend Tony here with a spiritual challenge for you for the month of October based in the theme of heritage. Do you think you're up for the challenge? Stick around. Before we get going with this month's challenge, just a reminder to please subscribe, like, follow, share, comment. All that stuff helps me a lot with these videos and these video projects. Thanks a lot. My spiritual challenge for you for the month of October is to reflect on your life in the light of what we are learning, or perhaps relearning, about the field of epigenetics. How environmental factors, things like diet, exercise, or maybe even more importantly, things like trauma and stress, come out in our gene expression. How the things we experience from our environment, they may not change our gene sequence, but they change how our genes are expressed physiologically, so that our bodies at a genetic level hold on to certain changes caused by environmental conditions. And those environmental conditions may be, in a sense, as benign or easy to see as diet and exercise, or as complex as emotional trauma. And what we're learning is that these epigenetic changes in gene expression can be passed on from one generation to the next, so that a traumatic emotional experience experienced by an ancestor lives in their genetic expression, and that expression is passed on to the next generation and or the next. It's fascinating. There's a lot to this. So take some time this month. This is my challenge. Learn a little bit about it and reflect on your life a little bit. Here's some more background info, then I'll come back to some things I think about as I'm learning more about this. The Center for Disease Control defines epigenetics as the study of how our behaviors and environment cause changes that affect the way our genes work. Unlike genetic changes, epigenetic changes are reversible and do not change the DNA sequence, but they change how our bodies read DNA sequences, and they change our gene expression. Gene expression refers to how often or when certain proteins are created from the instructions within your genes. And while genetic changes can alter which protein is made, epigenetic changes affect gene expression to turn genes on or off. Since your environment and behaviors can result in epigenetic changes, it comes as a real revelation to start to see the connection between genes, behavior, environment, and now we're also learning how they're passed down generation to generation. There have been a number of popular books published on this topic in recent years. Wonderful works that make this accessible. You don't need to be a geneticist to understand or follow what's going on with the implications for our understanding of evolution and our understanding of emotional and physiological changes. The writers are doing a great job. It's stuff that makes you think. It's profound. I highly recommend these three that I've read personally. The Body Keeps the Score, Brain, Mind, and Body in the Healing of Trauma by Bessele van der Kolk was the first major popular work to discuss epigenetics and how the body holds on to hurt, pain, trauma, and emotional experiences. My Grandmother's Hands, Racialized Trauma and the Pathway to Mending Our Hearts and Bodies by Resmaa Menakem is just one of the recent books that looks at how the genetic inheritance of trauma for both white people and people of color shapes the experience and thus the understanding of race. Lamarck's Revenge, How Epigenetics is Revolutionizing Our Understanding of Evolution's Past and Present by Peter Ward, places epigenetics in the context of the larger conversation about DNA and evolution by natural selection. The implications of all this I just find fascinating. Trauma lives in our body, and we're able to pass it on, or we do pass it on, to our children and possibly grandchildren, it makes me wonder about what we'll find out about how things like, say, meditation have deep and lasting effects. We know meditation is beneficial. We know yoga is beneficial. These practices, when they become internalized and routinized and become part of who we are, they do change us at the level of DNA. We know that being present in nature is good for us. When that becomes a regular part of our environment and something we have access to, how does it benefit us when it creates changes in us physiologically? What if we're deprived of that opportunity to exist and connect with nature, or to be able to take time to settle and be quiet, such as in meditation or yoga? The implications are profound when you think about how this might multiply and exponentiate down through the generations if the changes caused by negative impact, trauma, in our genes and genetic expression are never healed. And what can we do to heal those? In My Grandmother's Hands, Menachem talks about how for generations white people in Europe inflicted trauma on white bodies. That gets embedded, and those white bodies then start to inflict trauma in North America and other places on black bodies. What might our understanding be of the impact we cause each other through exposure to trauma and hurt and anger and violence? How might we begin to look at that differently? How might we look at our own lives in light of all of this? Something I think about a lot is my father, who's passed away, was adopted at a very young age. His mom and dad had died in a car accident, and he was adopted by a couple, Jack and Marcia Lorenzen, and that adopted mom died. And then his adopted dad remarried, and when my dad was 18, that second adopted mom died. So by the time my dad was 18, he had had his mom and next two adopted moms die. 3 moms by the age of 18. How did that affect him? How did it make him angry? How did it affect his emotional life? How was that passed on to my brother and I, who, when we were younger, we saw my dad's anger. We had lots of different difficult issues with him. And I have a whole different kind of a feeling for him and what he's gone through as I learned about the effects of trauma. But now learning about how that gets all embedded, that takes it to a whole nother level. And when we talk about things such as stopping the chain of passing on trauma and difficult behavior to our children, we need to put a brake on the negative inheritances we've received and not pass them on. As we learn more about this, perhaps we'll learn more about what strategies we can use to do that most effectively. And for all the emotional issues, not to mention physical issues we deal with, if there are epigenetic, genetic expression causes to those, how might it expand the ways we treat things that still carry shame, obesity, mental illness? So I'm inviting you to learn a little bit about this month and to reflect on it in light of your own life, in light of your ancestors, in light of your children, in light of things that have happened to you that you still might carry with you. What healing might have been done by your parents or grandparents? What might have been left undone? What healing have you done? What is left undone? How does this affect who you are? And how might you better understand yourself, knowing that part of the way you are and the way you've experienced life is due to these type of epigenetic genetic expression changes? Might it allow you to be kinder to yourself, more compassionate to yourself? Give yourself a break for difficulties and stresses that you've had to deal with in your life. As always, I would love to hear how you do with this challenge and what you think of this stuff about epigenetics and genetic expression and the body keeping score and passing on trauma generation to generation. Let me know. Send me a comment. Be in touch. Until next time, go in peace. Check out my website and blog at tonylorenzen.com for even more resources that will open your mind, touch your heart, and inspire your spirit.